Now that I think about it, I really blame you motherfucking weak ass hoes for letting these niggas motherfucking think they can play with real bitches. Y'all hoes gonna sit and wait on a nigga to feed y'all. Y'all gonna sit and wait on a nigga to do everything for y'all. Y'all not gonna go get up and get it. So when they come around the real bitch that do everything on their own, they feel like they can take your power away. Bitch, you can't take no power from a bitch that built herself. Like, you can't. You can never. What you is gonna do is you gonna play yourself out of a real bitch that's gonna stay down with your ass, do whatever. Soon as a nigga do some pussy ass shit, now you a weird hoe. Bitch, I'm gonna be a dumb hoe, a weird hoe, a tweaking hoe. Bitch, I'm gonna nut the fuck up when you play in my face. Niggas gotta learn to play where it's safe at. It's not safe over here. Don't come playing in a bitch energy that don't need a nigga for nothing. Bitch, I don't need a nigga for a penny, bitch. Like, certain reasons why you shouldn't play with a real bitch. I'm not using you. Yeah, you can see the signs. What kind of hang ass nigga tell you, oh, you spend too much money on your nails and your goddamn hair and feet. You can be saving that money. Bitch, you go over there and tell that hoe how to live her life. A bitch that don't call no nigga for nothing? How the hell you gonna tell me what the fuck to do with my money, bitch? If you pay attention, you'll really listen to what these hang ass niggas be saying. Like, bitch, go take that bitch over that throne. I know who I am. Bitch, if I ever waited, it's because, okay, I'm grinding. Bitch, when I want to get out and pop out a little cute, I will. If I want to be a bum, I will. Can't no nigga come in my world trying to water me down. You don't need this. You need to wait. Whole time you waiting on nothing. If I was a weak asshole that would have waited, a bitch TV would have still been on the floor.
She drove for over an hour, in the middle of the night, with all 4 of her children in the car. She pulled into a gas station off Highway 288 in Angleton, Texas, got out, pumped her gas, got back on her phone, and then she waited. When deputies pulled up at 4:48 in the morning, what they found inside that vehicle changed every single one of them forever. But here is what nobody was prepared for. When investigators sat down with this mother and asked her why she called 911, she said, "Instead of them doing it to me, I'm going to do it to them." They asked her, "Do what?" She said, "Kill them all." Then she told them she did not call 911. She said she called the devil. This is the story of Oninda Romulus, and nothing about it is simple. Welcome back to Unseen Stories. I'm glad you are here today, because this is one of those cases that stopped me completely when I first came across it. Not because crime stories are new, not because tragedy is rare, but because of the layers in this story, the history, the questions that nobody has fully answered yet, and the children at the center of all of it who deserved so much better than what happened to them. We are going to take our time with this one. We are going to go through everything. The morning of October 4th, 2025. The background of this woman that goes back years before that morning. A television appearance that connects directly to one of the victims. A house full of fraudulent documents that investigators were not expecting to find. Social media posts made just 8 days before. Friends defending her online. A community trying to make sense of something that has no clean answer. This is not a short story, so get comfortable. Because by the time we are done, you are going to understand exactly what we know, what is still being investigated, and what this case is really asking us to think about as a community. Let us start from the beginning. Oninda Romulus was 31 years old at the time of this incident. Originally from Haiti, she had spent a significant portion of her life in Atlanta, Georgia. Atlanta became home for her. It was where she built her adult life, where she had her children, where she navigated relationships, hardship, and everything that comes with being a single mother in this country. By the accounts of people who knew her, she was someone who always had something going on. She was described as an aspiring rapper, an entrepreneur, a tax preparer, someone who on the surface appeared to be working hard and building something for herself and her kids. She had 4 children, a 13-year-old boy, a 9-year-old girl, an 8-year-old boy, and a 3-year-old girl. 4 children, all with different pieces of her story attached to them, and we will get into that. In July of 2025, Oninda made a decision to leave Georgia and relocate to Texas, specifically to Porter in Montgomery County, about an hour north of Houston. According to people close to her, the move was about starting fresh, getting her children into a better environment, building a new chapter. She found a home on Spear Valley Lane in Porter. She had only been there a few months by the time October came around. Neighbors said they barely knew her. Most had not had any real interaction with her at all. But they saw her children. They saw them regularly. One neighbor who asked to remain anonymous told reporters something that is hard to forget. She said she would see those children walking down the street, smiling, waving, stopping to pet her little Yorkie at the fence. She said she saw them on Friday, just one day before everything happened. She said they seemed happy, normal, just kids being kids. She thought she would see them again on Monday. She never did. Those same 4 children who were outside on Friday afternoon happy and waving at neighbors were inside their mother's vehicle at a gas station an hour away from home before the sun came up on Saturday. How does something like that happen? What takes place between a Friday afternoon where everything looks normal and a Saturday morning that ends in tragedy? That is the question that investigators, the community, and honestly all of us are still sitting with. Now, before we get to October 4th, I need to take you back. Because this story does not start at that gas station. It starts years earlier. Approximately 13 years before this tragedy, Oninda appeared on a television show called Paternity Court. The episode is still available on YouTube, which is how it became part of this story. And the child at the center of that episode was her oldest son, the same boy who was 13 years old on the morning of October 4th. On that episode, Oninda brought 2 men to court. The first was a man named Dwayne Seymour. He had been her fiancé of 4 years. He had been present throughout the pregnancy. He had been at doctor's appointments. He had stepped into the role of father completely. He even proposed to her with his mother's ring. His mother's ring. That is not a small thing. That is a man who believed in what he was building with this woman. The second man was Jeremy Coington. She described him as a mutual friend. But what came out in court was more complicated than that. Oninda admitted on that show that her relationship with Dwayne had become rocky. She said she heard he was seeing someone else. Dwayne denied it. But Oninda said she responded to that suspicion in her own way. She admitted in her own words on camera in front of that judge, "I cheated on him basically out of spite." That is a direct quote. Her words. Not an accusation. Not speculation. She said it herself. And here is where it got complicated. She was intimate with Jeremy Coington within the same 2.5-week window that she was also intimate with Dwayne. She became pregnant. And instead of being upfront about the situation, she told Dwayne the baby was his. Let him believe it. Let him invest. Emotionally. Financially. He showed up. He was present. Meanwhile, she was also communicating with Jeremy, letting him believe he could be the father too. He bought clothes, diapers. He kept the baby for weeks at a time. His mother welcomed Oninda into the family. And when it came time to give birth, it was not Dwayne who was at the hospital. It was Jeremy. And on the birth certificate, she put Jeremy's name as the father. So you have Dwayne feeling betrayed. You have Jeremy stepping fully into fatherhood. And you have Oninda in the middle managing both situations. The judge on that show was not having it. She looked at Oninda and said, "You ran from this one to go to this one, then you ran back from this one back to this one. Now that the baby is born, you're still doing the same thing." And then the judge said something else. She said, "One thing you're not going to do. You might be able to outtalk and manipulate them, but you can't do it to me." Then the DNA results came. Dwayne was tested first, not the father. The courtroom was tense. Jeremy was confident. He had been in that boy's life for 2 years. Changed diapers. Bought clothes. Kept him for weeks at a time. His mom had welcomed Oninda into the family. The judge looked at the results. Jeremy Coington. Not the father either. Oninda had been with a third person during that window. Someone she never mentioned. Never brought to court. Never acknowledged. Neither man was the biological father of her son. Now I want to be clear about something here. What happened on a paternity court show years ago does not determine who someone is forever. People make mistakes. People go through complicated situations. That in itself is not a crime. But it is context. And in a case like this, context matters. Because the boy at the center of that paternity case grew up. He became 13 years old. And he was inside that vehicle on October 4th, 2025. After the paternity court appearance, life continued for Oninda. The relationship with Dwayne eventually ended. According to reports, he was later convicted of attempting to kidnap a prosecutor's father and was sentenced to prison. Oninda moved on. She found another relationship. In 2022, she posted a man for National Boyfriend's Day. Photos of the two of them together, smiling, building what she described as a future. The two went on to have a daughter together. That little girl became her youngest child, her 3-year-old. That relationship also ended. The man she had that daughter with was later arrested and charged with murder along with several other serious offenses, leaving Oninda again, this time as a single mother of 4. 2 relationships. 2 men who ended up incarcerated on serious charges. 4 children to raise on her own. Whatever you think about Oninda Romulus as a person, you have to acknowledge that her life was not without real difficulty and real hardship. In December of 2024, she took to social media and posted something that reads very differently now than it probably did when she wrote it. She said, "This past week, the devil has sent his minions to irritate and annoy me. I'm just glad I ignored them, cause the way I'm heading, it's jail or somewhere else. Thankful I've made it this far." Read that again. The way I am heading, it is jail or somewhere else. She wrote that herself. In December 2024. Less than a year before October 4th, 2025. Then in June of 2025, she posted what sounded like a birthday message to herself. She wrote, "Established 6/18/1994. Best of both worlds, 31 Queen Energy. This chapter is called Peace in a Soft Girl Era. My life is a reflection of God's goodness and mercy. I'm thankful for the lessons learned and the memories made. I'm stepping into this new chapter with faith and expectation. Thanks to everyone who wished me a happy birthday. You are appreciated." That is someone who sounds like they are turning a corner. Someone who genuinely believes things are getting better. Who is looking forward. And then she moved to Texas. July 23rd, 2025. A fresh start. A new home on Spear Valley Lane in Porter, Texas. And then just 8 days before October 4th, she posted something on social media that a lot of people have pointed to. The caption read, "'Cause what it really do. You're not a bad word if you're a terrible mother. To all my mamas handling biz and did not handle biz this week, baby, go to happy hour. Forget them kids. Now I want to be fair here." Posts like that exist all over social media. Moms joking about needing a break, needing space, needing to breathe. That is not automatically a sign of anything. Parenting is hard. Humor is a coping mechanism. But investigators noted it. The media reported it. And in the context of what happened 8 days later, people could not look past it. Here is what the neighbors remember about Friday, October 3rd, 2025. The children were outside, walking down Spear Valley Lane, waving, smiling, stopping to pet that Yorkie. The grandfather of 2 of the children, a man named Chappelle, later spoke to reporters. He said he saw them on Friday. He said they were happy, on their way somewhere, saying hi and bye. He said he figured he would see them again on Monday. He said, "Just seeing him Friday and they were happy and on their way telling us hi and bye and figuring I would see them again Monday." And then when the reporter asked about his 3-year-old granddaughter Amari Chappelle, who did not survive, he said, "I started crying immediately. That's my grandbaby. That man lost his grandbaby. A 3-year-old little girl named Amari. I want us to hold that for a moment. Because in all the details of this case, in all the investigation and the legal proceedings and the social media posts and the court documents, there is a 3-year-old girl named Amari who had a grandfather who loved her, who saw her on a Friday afternoon, and never saw her again. That is what is at the center of this. Somewhere between Friday evening and the early hours of Saturday morning, something happened. Investigators have said they believe what occurred that night took place inside the vehicle. They have not released the specific location where it happened or the full timeline of how the night unfolded. That is still part of the active investigation. What we know is this. At some point during those early morning hours, Oninda Romulus got all 4 of her children into a white sedan. She drove south on Highway 288. She drove for over an hour. Past communities. Past exits. Past every opportunity to stop somewhere closer to home. She kept driving. Until she pulled into a Shell gas station off Highway 288 in Angleton, Texas, in Brazoria County, an hour and a half from where she lived. She pulled up to a gas pump. She got out. She pumped gas. She got on her phone. Surveillance video from that gas station captured all of it. And then she waited for deputies to arrive. At 4:48 in the morning on October 4th, 2025, the Brazoria County Sheriff's Office received a 911 call. The caller gave her location. She did not give many details, just enough for deputies to respond. When they arrived at that Shell gas station, they found Oninda Romulus standing outside the vehicle. Inside the white sedan, all 4 doors open, engines still running, were her 4 children. All 4 had sustained gunshot wounds. 2 of them, her 13-year-old son and her 3-year-old daughter Amari, did not survive. They were gone by the time deputies arrived. The 2 surviving children, a 9-year-old girl and an 8-year-old boy named Trayville Donner, were still alive. Deputies immediately began providing life-saving measures. They did not wait. They worked on those children right there at that gas station until medical help arrived. Both surviving children were airlifted to a Houston area hospital. They were in critical condition, fighting for their lives. Now here is something that came out in the court documents that deserves attention. Investigators noted that when deputies arrived and looked inside that vehicle, Oninda had covered her children with a white sheet. She had covered them. She pumped gas. She got on her phone. She waited. And her children were covered with a white sheet inside that vehicle. The weapon she used was located by deputies. They confirmed a weapon was used. They have not publicly released details about the caliber or the number of rounds fired. That information remains part of the ongoing investigation. After Oninda was taken into custody, investigators sat down with her. And what she said in those conversations became part of the official court documents. First, she was asked whether she wanted to continue talking with authorities. She said yes. When asked why she called 911, she initially said she could not talk about it. When asked again, she said, "Instead of them doing it to me, I'm going to do it to them." The investigator asked, "Do what?" She said, "Kill them all." Then she said she did not call 911. She said she called the devil. She was asked where her children were. She said, "The devil." She was asked what she meant by that. She said, "They're dead." And then she said, "'Cause you can't take me without me taking you." Now investigators noted in their report that at one point she said she was ready to work, which they wrote did not make sense in the context of the conversation. But she also correctly named all 4 of her children and stated their ages accurately during that interview. So there was coherence alongside statements that seemed disconnected from reality. Those statements became central to the public conversation around this case, because they raised 2 very different possibilities that a jury will one day have to consider. On one hand, those statements are extremely incriminating. She appears to be acknowledging what happened. She appears to be claiming it as her own action. On the other hand, the language she used, calling law enforcement the devil, speaking about forces taking her, the disconnected nature of some of what she said, those things open a door to questions about her mental state at the time. Criminal defense attorney Anthony Osso, a former assistant district attorney who was asked to comment on the case, explained how Texas law approaches this. He said, "The law in Texas when it comes to insanity basically states that you have to establish that the person wasn't aware of the consequences of their actions. So they really couldn't process what they were doing at the time that the offense was committed. It's a really high standard, and you don't often see successful insanity defenses. They do occur, but it's definitely the exception to the rule." He went on to say, "I think statements like that are something that the defense at least would tip the defense off to explore in this case. Especially when we're talking about first-degree murder charges or potentially capital murder where a defendant faces life without parole in prison. The defense has to explore every single avenue. So the legal picture here is complicated, and it is going to take time to fully unfold." When investigators went to Oninda's home in Montgomery County to serve a search warrant, they were initially there because of early reports suggesting there might be a 5th child unaccounted for, a 17-year-old. That search drove the initial focus on the residence. It turned out, according to sources, that the 5th child did not exist. Friends of Oninda took to social media to confirm she only had 4 children, and the sheriff's office eventually aligned with that conclusion. Where that initial information came from was never fully clarified publicly. But here is what investigators found when they got inside that house. They found what the Montgomery County Sheriff's Office described as an identity theft operation: 33 Social Security cards, 48 ID cards, 16 credit cards. Some of them had Oninda's name on them. Others had different names but her photo. Many of them were in various stages of being made. Not finished, being made. Inside her home, deputies were there for approximately 12 hours. They towed a vehicle from the driveway. They collected evidence throughout the property. Now this detail complicated the public perception of this case significantly, because Oninda had been known in her social circles as a legitimate tax preparer. Friends described her that way. They said she had her hands in a lot of things: rapper, entrepreneur, tax preparer, someone who was building something. And some of those same friends said that because she was a tax preparer, there might be an explanation for having various documents in the home. That client's information passes through a tax preparer's hands all the time. But law enforcement described what they found as an identity theft operation, not a filing cabinet of client documents. 48 ID cards in various stages of production with her photo and other people's names. And here is something that adds another layer to this. Back in August of 2024, Oninda had posted publicly about another tax preparer. She accused that person of being fraudulent. She posted, "She couldn't calculate the funds and I was stepping in to help. She is owed over $80,000 for prep fees she has taken and miscalculated." She was calling out someone else for alleged fraud, while allegedly running a similar type of operation herself. Whether that connection is meaningful or coincidental is something investigators are looking into. Before Texas, Oninda had a criminal record from Georgia. In 2022, she was arrested in Fayette County for a DUI, possession of marijuana, failure to maintain lane, and an improper tag. Court records show she pleaded guilty to the DUI and the improper tag charges. Prosecutors chose not to pursue the other two charges. That is her known criminal history prior to October 4, 2025. There were also reports that Child Protective Services had made contact with Oninda at some point prior to this incident. CPS confirmed one prior interaction, but the details of that interaction were not made public and remain confidential. Oninda Romulus was charged with 2 counts of murder and 2 counts of aggravated assault with a deadly weapon. Her bond was set at $5 million for each murder count and $2 million for each aggravated assault count. That brings the total bond to $14 million. Attorney Anthony Osso spoke about what the defense's approach might look like. He said, "They're going to want to listen to the statement of the 2 other children. They're going to want to look at the crime scene and look to see whether the investigation was conducted properly. Were chain of custodies when it comes to the ballistics on scene done properly? Did they do DNA in this case? And just when you look at the big picture, trying to find the holes in the investigation where the police didn't do their job like they're supposed to." And on the question of how long before this reaches a courtroom, he was direct. He said, "The wheels of justice turn slow. And especially in Houston and surrounding counties, just because there's a big population. So I don't foresee this case going to trial within the next year and a half. I think more likely we're looking at 2 years. And especially when it comes to murder cases and a murder of a child, there are going to be boatloads of discovery. So this case is in the early stages of what will be a long legal process." After news of this case broke, Oninda's friends did not stay silent. Several of them took to social media to speak on her behalf. And their comments tell a story of people who genuinely could not reconcile what they were hearing with the person they knew. One friend posted, "Me and Nina spoke about a lot and she never was stressed about her kids. She took very good care of them and never abused them. She went to Houston for peace of mind and better living for her and her kids. If she didn't love them, why would she sacrifice so much for them?" Another friend pushed back on the idea that Oninda was responsible, saying, "They charged her with 2 times with it, but I'm hearing that her son was the one who did it. And then she did it to him in defense." Now law enforcement was very clear on this point. Sheriff Stallman stated publicly and plainly at the press conference,
"Yesterday, Brazoria County deputies responded to an unthinkable, unimaginable tragedy. This event has shaken our community, and we are all feeling the loss. While this remains an active investigation, I do want to share what details with you that I can at this point. Evidence indicates that the driver of the vehicle identifies as a 31-year-old Oninda Romulus. She's the mother of the 4 children involved. All 4 children have sustained gunshot wounds. Sadly, a 13-year-old boy and a 3-year-old girl did not survive. We are thankful to report that an 8-year-old boy and a 9-year-old girl are now in stable condition. We believe that the evidence shows that this tragedy has occurred inside of the vehicle and that the mother of the children, is the shooter. At 4:48 a.m. yesterday, Romulus called the Brazoria County Sheriff's Office. When deputies arrived, they immediately began providing lifesaver measures to each children until medical help could arrive. The two surviving children were life-flighted into a Houston area hospital where they remain in stable condition. Romulus was later arrested and charged with 2 counts of murder and 2 counts of aggravated assault. Aggravated assault with a deadly weapon, with a total bond set at $14 million. Romulus is a current resident of the Montgomery County here in Texas, where Sheriff Wesley Doolittle is the sheriff there of Montgomery County, and he is here with us today. His office has assisted us with investigative tasks that have taken place there in Montgomery County. Our investigators, along with responding agencies, continue to collect and analyze evidence in this case in this ongoing investigation. I also want to thank the people of Brazoria County and our surrounding communities. The prayers, the messages and support shown for these children, and also for the first responders involved in this, mean more to us than what words can express. It is impossible to make sense of a senseless tragedy like this, but we will do everything we can to seek justice for these children. I will now open this up for a few questions. However, before I do want to be clear that there are still many details that cannot be released at this point, okay? So, do you have any questions? Yes, ma'am.
Sheriff J1 with KPRC. I was wondering if you happen to know exactly the location where the shooting took place?
Again, that is part of the ongoing investigation that we're still looking into. So,
You mentioned that she called 911. Can you just explain a little bit more about that? At what point did that happen?
at what point did what happen? She called, yes, she called 911. I believe the time was what, 4:48 a.m. Is that what I said? Yeah. Well, yes.
So can you?
What did she say exactly when she called?
She called and our deputy responded. She called and she gave us information that we need to come to her location. We didn't know exactly what we were responding to at the time.
I'm sorry, Troy Klesser, KHOU. Can you share what investigators found at their home in Montgomery County? And that was their permanent residence there?
Yeah, that's exactly where her permanent residence was. Again, that's part of the ongoing investigation. That's where her residence was, so that's why we went to that residence.
Did she have any criminal history, or is there any background on her at this point?
That's part of the ongoing investigation that we're continuing to look into, and I can assure you that we will do everything in our power to find justice for these children.
Have the two surviving children been interviewed, or are there plans to interview them and get an understanding of what they saw?
Can you ask your question again?
Have the two surviving children been interviewed, or is there plans to?
Yes, they have been interviewed. They're going to continue to cooperate as well. Yeah.
Is she a parent that has sole custody of the children?
I am not going to mention much about the custody situation. There's a lot of things that is still it's an active investigation. Okay.
Sheriff, would you have an active investigation? We understand there's not a lot that you.
There really is not.
But a lot of folks are just wondering, what went wrong here?
Right.
Is there anything that you could share with us, just as far as what went wrong here?
Like I said, at this point, this is still an ongoing. However, what is most important is that our team is working on this. We've been burning the midnight oil on this ever since this dropped, right? So I can assure you we're looking into this, and there is a lot of stuff that is not able to be released at this point. So, all right.
We have time for about one more question.
Are you able to share? Are you able to share what kind of weapon was recovered, or was there a weapon recovered?
I'm still, like I said, it was a weapon that she did utilize, and she did shoot. I'm not going to tell you all the calibers and all the details of it. There's not time for that.
Sir, do we know what the motive? Hey, folks, I'm sorry. I just said we had one more question left. I got to get these guys back to work. I'll answer any additional that you have.
Any indication, you said that the mother lived in Montgomery County.
Yes.
Why was she in Brazoria? Can you release that information? What brought her here?
I can, again, that is part of the active and ongoing investigation.
So there is a direct contradiction between what some of Oninda's friends are claiming online and what law enforcement is stating based on the evidence they have gathered. Authorities have not confirmed any version of events that places responsibility on any of the children. And here is a detail that matters when evaluating the claims made by some of her friends. One person who responded to those social media posts, apparently someone with some knowledge of the situation, said the following: "Girls, stop acting like she left for peace. No, she went because she was getting paranoid. She put so much evil in the world. She didn't know where it was coming from. She checked her firstborn child and proceeded to put everyone else in the car. She drove around 90 minutes until she was out of gas, contacting authorities as she proceeded to gas up. She thought they would all be deceased at that point, and she always called the law the devil. So when 12 asked her that, it wasn't far-fetched. That is unconfirmed. Authorities have not verified that account, but it is part of what is being discussed in the community around this case. And full transparency matters here even when information is alleged and not yet confirmed. The 9-year-old girl and the 8-year-old boy named Travail Donner survived. They were airlifted to Memorial Hermann Hospital. They were in critical condition initially. They fought, and they stabilized. Those 2 children became witnesses. They were present. They saw what happened inside that vehicle. And investigators interviewed them once they were medically stable enough to speak. Sheriff Stallman confirmed at the press conference that the surviving children are cooperating with investigators. He said they are continuing to provide information that is critical to the case. Let me be honest with you about what that means for a second. These are children. Children who lost their older brother and their baby sister. Children who survived injuries that required airlifting to a trauma hospital. And now they are being asked to tell investigators what they witnessed. Whatever your view on this case, whatever questions remain, those 2 children are carrying something that no child should ever have to carry. And the road ahead for them in terms of healing, in terms of growing up with this reality, that is something we should not gloss over quickly. They deserve to be protected. They deserve support. And they deserve a future that is not defined entirely by one morning in October. Sheriff Stallman held a press conference on Sunday, October 5th. He was joined by Sheriff Wesley Doolittle of Montgomery County. When reporters asked about motive, he said, "The motive? I can't speculate on that right now. I do know that we are working and interviewing both her and any other witnesses involved to try to determine that." When asked why Oninda was in Brazoria County when she lived in Montgomery County, he said, "I can't." Again, that is part of the active and ongoing investigation that we're looking into. When asked about the weapon, he said, "It was a weapon that she did utilize and she did shoot. I'm not going to tell you all the calibers and all the details of it." And he closed the press conference with these words: "It is impossible to make sense of a senseless tragedy like this, but we will do everything we can to seek justice for these children." Senseless. That is the word that keeps coming up around this case. And it is honest, because there is no framework that makes this okay. There is no explanation that brings those 2 children back or fully repairs the 2 who survived. I want to talk to the community for a second before we close this out. This case raises questions that go beyond what happened at that gas station. It raises questions about systems, about support, about what we do and do not notice in the lives of people around us. A woman relocated to a new city with 4 children and had been there only a few months. Neighbors barely knew her. Nobody had really interacted with her. And within months of arriving, something reached a point that ended in tragedy. How often do we see someone move into a neighborhood and not check in, not introduce ourselves, not ask if they need anything? How often do we notice someone who seems to be carrying a lot and keep walking? Oninda Romulus posted publicly in December 2024 that the way she was heading it was jail or somewhere else. She wrote that publicly, and the world kept moving. That does not mean someone reading that post had a responsibility to intervene in a way that would have changed what happened. Life is not that simple. But it does make us think about what we miss when we are not paying attention to each other. The second thing I want to say is this. There are 2 children who survived this. An 8-year-old and a 9-year-old. They are real people, with a whole life ahead of them, with trauma that will take years to process with the right support. Their names have been kept out of widespread media coverage to protect them, and that is right and good. But wherever they are right now, whatever family has stepped in or will step in to care for them, those children need a community that sees them, that does not let them become a footnote in a crime story, that remembers them not just as survivors of a tragedy but as children with futures worth investing in. And the third thing, for every parent watching this who is overwhelmed, who is struggling, who is carrying more than they feel they can carry, there are resources, there are people. There are places you can go before a situation becomes something you cannot come back from. You do not have to be perfect. You do not have to have it all together. But please, if you are at a point where your thoughts are going somewhere dark, reach out. Call a crisis line. Talk to a doctor. Talk to a pastor. Talk to a neighbor you barely know. Because the people who need you most are counting on you to still be here. Oninda Romulus is currently being held in the Brazoria County Jail on a $14 million bond. She has been charged with 2 counts of murder and 2 counts of aggravated assault with a deadly weapon. She is presumed innocent until proven guilty in a court of law. This case is still an active investigation. More details will emerge as the legal process moves forward. The 2 children who lost their lives on October 4, 2025 deserve to be remembered as more than victims. They were real. They had people who loved them. A grandfather who wept on camera. A community who saw them walking down a street on a Friday afternoon and thought nothing of it because everything seemed fine. May they rest in peace. May the 2 who survived find healing that is real, sustained, and surrounded by people who show up for them. And may this case remind all of us that the people who need the most support are sometimes the people we least expect. Thank you for being here with me today on Unseen Stories. If this video meant something to you, share it. Not for the algorithm. Share it because this story deserves to be heard with the full weight it carries. Drop your thoughts in the comments. This community is a space for real conversation. I will see you on the next one.